Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Out There Hour, home of the unusual. I'm talking about Basil primarily.
The Out There Hour on Alternative Future Radio. The Out There Hour with Basil and Mark. www.alternativefutureradio.com.
Yay! Everybody join in on the yay.
Isn't he great? I love that new jingle.
Do you like that one?
Yeah.
We've got a selection of those over coming weeks to try out. We're just trying that out to fit.
We'll be playing them over and over and over again.
Yes, like an autistic numpty that you are. We've got a guest today.
Oh, I'm very excited.
Big guest.
Imagine.
Go on. Oh, I hate it when you start these things with imagine. Don't mention Dr. Dolittle.
I won't. Imagine, if you will,
Yeah.
a supercomputer
Right.
that can predict the future. Science fiction
Yeah.
or science fact.
Or Basil off on one.
Today we are talking to Paul Guercio
Yes, we are indeed. Yes.
of the Merlin project
We are indeed. Yeah. Yeah.
and his computer program that can do just that.
Yes. And he's predicted a number of events throughout history.
He's
Quite successfully?
He's predicted historical events, and he can also predict the best time for you to perhaps start a project,
Yeah.
get married,
Children, that kind of thing.
maybe even run for office.
He's got a number of websites. We've got links to them all on our website, alternativefutureradio.com. He's got lots of what they call time tracks, which I'm going to be asking him about.
He's very kindly sent us a huge
load
stack
of these things. I'm going to put some of these on our website on Paul Guercio's page so that people can download and have a look at these while they're listening, and they can go through these. We've got some of them specific to us. He's done a couple of these tracks on you and me and this show,
which I'm very...
which I didn't tell you about, and you only learnt about 30 seconds ago.
I hope it's going to be good.
I hope so. We can get some of these tracks from, I think it's, you can actually, I put all the links on the website so they're easier to find, because there's a few sites there.
They'll do a time track for you as an individual,
yes,
or as a company, and they have done they've done time tracks for the editor of Vanity Fair. He was mentioning to us
all
kinds of celebrities and business people.
I imagine he probably won't even tell us some of them.
When's the best time to launch something? A product,
business,
or a business, or...
But then there's also the political stuff as well. I imagine investors have probably got a lot of interest in this kind of thing, because they can see political instability, oil prices, that kind of thing.
These guys are advisors to some very big fish in the world.
Oh, yes, yeah. So we shall hopefully, without further ado, go over to, I believe, New Hampshire, and we shall talk to Paul Guercio. Do we have you there, Paul Guercio?
You have me here.
Aha! Did I remember right? You are in New Hampshire, aren't you?
I'm actually in Maine.
Oh, in Maine.
I'm a little closer to you than New Hampshire.
A little.
Is this Stephen?
I'm the shore that the ocean hits after it bangs off against you guys.
So, the Merlin Project, or is it the Merlin Project or Project Merlin?
Well, we use both.
Right.
It started out as the Merlin Project. The website is listed as projectmerlin.com.
Yeah.
But that was a matter of politics involving network solutions, the people that handle the domain names and so on. But anyway, there was a time when you could get any domain name, nobody cared. Last time I looked, business.com sold for $20 million, I think, something like that.
Wow.
And there's still an ongoing battle about who owns sex.com.
Yeah, that sold for a lot of money, didn't it? I remember that one.
It sure did, and there was a lot of back and forth about it. A friend of mine who has a radio show on the Fox network in the States, and I guess you can hear Fox around the world. I think they stream it.
Yes.
Alan Combs registered the domain name Alan, ALAN.com. Okay,
nice.
That's like Basil.com or Paul.com.
Yeah.
He registered that when nobody cared.
You could probably retire on that now.
Well, not business.com. You had sex.com and a few others like that, but Coca-Cola.com probably. But anyway, it's interesting that this project, which began 23 years ago, began as the result of a radio show.
That's right.
I was a guest on a station, large 50,000 water out of Boston, called the David Brudnoy Show on WBZ Boston, and I had been doing David's show for years.
Yes.
And
as an astrologer, was it?
I started out doing astrology, and that's where my interest began back in the late 60s. But I noticed something. I did something my astrology teacher at the time said don't do, and that was don't mix and match. Okay, in other words, stay away from tarot cards and Ouija boards and runes and all of that stuff. Just do astrology.
Oh, okay.
I didn't listen to him, and I looked at all these other things. And after a few years, I noticed something. I noticed that each one of these, what we like to think of as sort of mystical systems, had a common thread.
Right.
And the common thread was they all dealt with time in very similar ways. And all of them basically are time-based. I mean, if you take a look at even a tarot reading has past, present, and future.
Yeah.
And if and oftentimes they'll tell you that a reading doesn't go forward any more than about 7 years. Well, we have, 7 lean years and fat years in the Bible and the 7-year itch. And if you break a mirror, you get 7 years of bad luck.
Yeah.
Where did that all come from?
Yeah.
Well, it came from the fact that the ancients of various civilizations noticed that events came in orderly patterns, used as measuring sticks for that every so often. The appearance of the white buffalo and, certain number systems happening in their mathematics and the appearance of certain planets at certain seasons in certain years and so on. And they used those as measuring sticks for this pattern that they had noticed. In other words, they noticed the pattern and then they looked around for something to blame it on. Yeah. And the thing that they blamed it on depended on what civilization we're talking about here. So the Mayans blamed it on one thing, and the Sumerians and the Egyptians blamed it on something else. But they were all noticing the same something, and that is that time comes in orderly intervals and patterns. And if you start noticing that, you'll be able to forecast things.
Okay.
Because if things come along every so often, and the every so often is unique to that particular situation, you can start to forecast when that thing is going to happen again.
Now,
okay,
can I just ask you a question there? Is it that there are set intervals of time, or is it specific to the person or the thing or the institution? Do you have a cycle and I have a cycle, or are they all the same?
Well, a little of both.
Okay.
There are organized cycles in our little corner of the universe over here. I'll tell you what they are, and you and your guests and your colleague there can have some fun with this.
Okay.
If you take any event of any significance in your life, any event that was a new event, in other words, it was what we call a genesis event. It was not like something else that you've had happen before. So I'm sure we can all think of a few of those things, like first time you had sex, or first time you...
Funny you should say that, Paul. Yeah.
Excuse me?
It's funny you should say that, because the date that we started this podcast, March the 15th, was actually the first time I ever had sex. March the 15th.
That day?
Yes.
Like 2 months ago?
No, oh well, yeah. No. So it's quite interesting that the two dates.
You are pulling my leg.
I'm not, Paul. I'm telling the truth. Honest to God.
Is he really telling the truth?
He probably is. Actually, it's unfortunate, but it's probably the first, last, and only time.
Okay, well, maybe from the time track, I would wonder. Let's assume, for instance, that from that starting moment, which was what you call a genesis moment, there is a built-in pattern of repeatability. So here's the pattern.
Yeah.
No, 9 months later, there's a change.
Okay.
To some extent, and that's a fairly small one, to some extent, about 2 or 2.5 years later, there's a change. And then the big intervals, 7 1/4, 21, 42, 84 years later. So take an event that happened that was really important in your life, a past event.
Yeah.
Add 9 months to it first and see what happened at the 9-month juncture. And then you can look at the 2.5-year juncture, but most especially, you want to look at what happened about 7 years, actually 7 1/4 years later.
This sounds like what I would know as harmonics.
Well, in a way it is. It's harmonics would be a good way of describing it. One of my mentors, I'll go back and give you the rest of the years, but one of my mentors was not somebody into mystical stuff at all. I never met the man, but did a lot of studying of what he had discovered, because what he discovered is essentially a kind of harmonics. His name was John Nelson. You can Google him, John H. Nelson. He worked for RCA, Radio Corporation of America, the forerunner of NBC and so on.
Right.
RCA in the years between, let's say, the 20s and the 70s, used a lot of shortwave because we couldn't bounce things off satellites. There weren't any. Okay, so satellite transmission of communications is a relatively recent phenomenon, basically from about the middle or late 70s, 74, 5, 6 in there is basically where it started up, because that's when Larry King, for instance, here in the States, started doing a overnight national radio show, and it was done because they could bounce this signal off the satellites. They wouldn't have to tie up what they call landlines. Okay, there aren't a lot of landlines. There's a countless number of frequencies on which you can transmit audio. So therefore, when the satellites went in, Larry became a phenomenon, and for years he was on overnight all over the country, and probably could be heard in Europe as well.
Oh, we got him the same day.
That was satellite transmission. Before that, for all of the years back to the beginning of radio, essentially in the 20s, they had to use shortwave. Okay, and there were all these fancy shortwave receivers. Some of the best were made in Germany. Grundig made them, for instance. They were terrific. You could listen to, the Moscow Symphony Orchestra in real time out of Moscow on shortwave.
Yeah.
Okay, or if you needed to transmit important communications, whether it was civil communications or government stuff or whatever it was, the only way you could transmit that to, say, Europe from the States would either be by landline, the cable that went under the Atlantic, okay, which is a very limited number of circuits available, or shortwave. Okay, now shortwave is one of those phenomenon because you're bouncing the signals off the ionosphere and whatnot. Unlike what we have today, it's very, very sensitive to things like sunspots and solar flares.
Correct.
In the last couple of weeks, for instance, we've had some really nasty solar flares, so much so that they were afraid they were going to affect the satellites.
Yep, that's right.
But back in the 30s or 40s, they would have done hellish things to shortwave communications.
Yep.
So companies like RCA that were in the communications business needed to know if there was a way to forecast in advance when there would be sunspots or solar flares of a significant enough nature that it would affect point-to-point communications by shortwave.
Yeah.
And they hired this guy, John Nelson, to see if there was a way to do that. Well, Nelson, using planetary angles, kind of sort of like astrology, maybe?
Yeah.
Found out that when certain planets are in certain locations in our solar system, there is an increase or decrease in the level of solar flares and sunspots.
Right.
And conversely, when they're in other positions, organized positions, repeatable positions, ones that he could forecast, the sunspots and solar flares would go up. John Nelson got to the point where he was so good that he could predict that on Tuesday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, New York time, there was going to be a Class A solar flare. And so therefore you had to change the frequencies on which you'd be transmitting shortwave in order to not be affected by this solar flare.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, RCA had John Nelson installed in a position that they created for him called radio propagation analyst.
Yeah.
In other words, analyzing frequencies to see which ones could be used and which ones were going to not be able to be used in advance.
Yeah.
Weeks in advance, usually. And what he found was that some of the classical astrological angles, like squares and conjunctions and various other things like that, had not only a marked increase in the level of sunspots and solar flares, but that you could predict when this was going to happen because the solar system is like a clock. It's very organized. These planets take a certain length of time to make an orbit or a certain length of time to rotate on their axis, like us, okay, where our 24-hour day comes from and our sunrise and sunset and the full moons and new moons and the high tides and low tides and all of that stuff is planetary. Okay, it's affected by planetary movement. Well, Nelson discovered that when planets were in classical astrology positions, at least certain ones, that he could forecast sunspots and solar flares enough so that he kept the job for 40 years. Okay, with RCA. Not exactly your basic mystical company.
No.
No.
Okay. So it occurred to me when I started playing around with all of these mystical systems and noticing the patterns, the organized patterns of time in which these various systems were broken down. They all have a base 7, for instance. Not a base 5 or 10 or 25 or 50th anniversary is base 7. So 7 and 14 and 28 and 35 and so on.
Yeah.
Okay. The ones that seem to have the most impact are the ones that come along at about 7 years and then 21 years and then double that 42 years and then double that 84 years. So that if you took an event that happened in your life, let's say that was important, there was a Genesis event, something brand new, say 5 years ago, you would now know that about 2 or 2.5 years from now, there would be some kind of a reprise of the original event. The same people would be involved, or the same circumstances would be involved, or the next stage of those circumstances would be involved. Okay, and you could predict it with the same kind of accuracy that Nelson was using to predict sunspots and solar flares.
Would it be weaker than the initial event?
No, it's not. It's not. I don't think it's a cause and effect system.
Right.
One of the things that caught the ear of my colleague, who is a physicist, MIT physicist,
That's right.
who holds the patent on the laser, the excimer laser that's used in LASIK eye surgery and in semiconductor manufacturing. So all of these iPhones and whatnot are the brainchild, basically, of my colleague. He invented the laser that does that.
Wow.
Okay. He was listening to me on a radio show in Boston in the fall on Halloween, as a matter of fact, in 1988, and found that the story that I was telling about time, which is essentially the one I'm telling you, measured up, well, to things that he had discovered or considered as being likely himself. So he called me up and said, I want to come in for an appointment. I want to see what you're doing. So we made the appointment. He came in. It was an evening appointment. We were supposed to get started at 8 o'clock or something like that. At 3 in the morning, not having done his appointment at all, we concluded we better set up another date, because we spent the 6 hours comparing notes on time.
Right.
Okay. How time really works. Is it just an abstraction, or is it like the ocean tides or the seasons? It actually causes things. Okay. Certain intervals of time have some kind of a causal effect, like the sunspots and solar flares, that are predictable. Now, is the event predictable that's going to happen at that next juncture? Probably not. But if you know enough about the individual or the circumstance that you're measuring, and you know what they're likely to do because they've been around enough over enough years that you know a little about their history. So in other words, to be a good predictor, you need to be a good news junkie.
Yeah.
Okay? If you're not a good news junkie, you're going to be a lousy predictor.
Yeah.
But if you are a good news junkie and you've done some historical research on what the hell has happened to them over the years involved, and you know when the next time is likely to be, when call it the big stuff, is likely to surface in their life, you can make a pretty good prediction as to what kind of thing that event is liable to be. And not only will you have the right time of that event in the future, but a pretty decent idea of what kinds of circumstances might come up, considering who it is, okay, and what their way of doing things consists of. So if they're a criminal, or they're, if they're a celebrity, you can start to say, well, now let's see what happened in their life 5 or 6 or 7 years ago that would be coming up for some kind of renewal now. Their marriage, their career, making or losing money, gaining or losing family. What would be those things? And it occurred to me that one easy way to test this would be to line up a bunch of people who are born on the same day of the same year and nearly the same time. Yeah. Which, by the way, is what Dickens was talking about when he did The Prince and the Pauper. Prince and the Pauper, born on the same day of the same year, one to the king and one to the chimney sweep. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and then you follow the story. Okay, well, what's the story, basically? They switch roles at some point, okay? And the chimney sweep's kid becomes the prince and vice versa. That is the story. Well, what Dickens was paying homage to is the fact that if you're born on the same day of the same year, at nearly the same time is going to treat you exactly the same way. Yeah. Okay. In other words, if there's hills and valleys going into the future, measured from that moment, and a unique set of hills and valleys measured from that moment, then the people born on the same day of the same year at nearly the same time are going to have those hills and valleys appear at exactly the same time coordinates. Same years, same months, same weeks. And then what you're going to find, if this is all true, you're going to find the big stuff clustering around those times. That's when they're going to get married or get divorced.
So even if these people live different lives, they'll both have a major event of some sort on the same day. One might get addicted to smack, and one might start a business.
Let's put it this way: the same day would be nice if it was that precise.
Well, yeah, roughly.
I'm satisfied if it's the same month, or even maybe the same quarter of the same year. Yeah, that is the same 3 months. Okay. Now, the universe, to have a little fun at my expense. I didn't have any kids and never expected to have any, and then I got involved with a woman who was almost 20 years my junior, and we had a child.
You didn't see that coming, did you?
No, actually, I did see it coming. I just didn't see kids involved with it. Anyway, so I had this child, and she was working for this company, and about 9 months after she had the baby, she changed jobs, and she moved to another company in another city, doing something entirely different. And about a month or two after she got there, they hired a public relations person, a woman, and installed her in the adjacent office.
Mm-hmm.
Well, these women sort of got friendly, and, they were adjacent offices, similar ages. One walked into the other one's office at one point and noticed a little picture of a little boy on the desk and said, "Oh, you have a little boy?" And, yeah, well, I have one too. Gee, how old is your little boy? Well, he's about to be one. Gee, so's mine. When was yours born? October 4th, 1987. So was mine.
Mm-hmm.
Where was this? Beverly Hospital, Massachusetts, across the grass from each other, an hour apart.
Yeah.
These two kids were born to two women who didn't know each other, were working in entirely different companies. Now they're in the same company, in adjacent offices, with two kids born on the same day of the same year, within the same hour.
Yeah.
Okay. So, boy, did we have fun watching them grow up.
Yeah.
They had accidents at the same times, lost grandparents at the same times, and for the same reasons. Okay, things like cerebral hemorrhage and so on. Okay, they even had their maternal grandmothers.
Yeah.
Knit sweaters. Now, neither one of these women were known for knitting anything. I mean, some people have an aunt or somebody in the family that knits all the time. Okay, or at least used to. Knitting is probably a lost art. But anyway, we're now talking about 25 years ago. Anyway, people still knit. People still knit it. Okay, and they knit it often from something called simplicity patterns, because they've got the biggest collection of knitting patterns.
Yeah.
These two grandmothers knitted the same sweater with the same design. The only difference was the color.
Well.
Okay. At one point, one of them bought this outfit from the Disney store, and the other one, who lives in Florida, bought it at Walt Disney World, the same outfits for Christmas. Okay. Now, watching these kids grow up and watching the parallelism, satisfies me. To the great amusement of the universe, who dropped this in my lap.
Yeah.
Okay. Because you see, the idea of checking out people who were born on the same day of the same year at the same time occurred to me way before I had a child where that was the case. Okay. Now I've had it happen, and I've watched this kid, in fact, these two kids, over now 24 years, and I can tell you that the big stuff happened at the same times, including when I got divorced from his mother, and the other woman filed for but never concluded a divorce with the other child's father. And in both cases, it was the women who were going to throw the men out.
Yeah.
And in the same year, in the same quarter of the same year.
Oh my God.
Okay. Yeah. I'll tell you one little quick story. I didn't want to get married to this person. I wanted to just live with them. And they're my then mother-in-law, future mother-in-law, was convinced, oh my God, this child's going to have a terrible time. He's going to be in school, and he's going to have two unmarried parents.
Yeah.
Well, it turned out that when he did go to school, he wouldn't have been alone, because not only was the school filled with people that had something with their parents, but only half of them had parents living at home. So, okay, they had the other half, the other 50 some odd percent was their parents had already gotten divorced and were separated. So it didn't. I would have been right. Don't get married. Just live with the person. But anyway, so we get married, and I said, well, at least let me control this. So I found a date. I looked up. I used Merlin, used the system to find a date.
Yeah.
That was as benign, as devoid of activity, okay, over the next several years. And you have a couple of time tracks they gave you earlier.
I'm looking at them,
devoid of activity for the next several years.
See that, yeah.
in a particular portion of it. I was looking for a date like that to get married on, because my sense of it is marriage is trouble enough. You don't need to give it any help.
Okay.
So find a really
uneventful.
in the time tracks to do that. Well, I did. I found a 6-year window from March of 1990 until the late spring of 1996, when there was virtually nothing going on the time track. And for that 6 years and 2 months, it was absolutely benign in that marriage. No problems, no major eruptions, nothing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
At 6 years and 2 months, now mind you, I was the only one who knew what the time track looked like because they never asked to see it. My wife didn't, and her mother didn't, and both of them started out as being clients of mine. They didn't want to look at the time track.
Uh-huh.
At 6 years and 2 months, my now ex-wife's real father surfaced, who she had been told was dead, and her mother and an adopted father had kept him at an arm's distance for 30 years with restraining orders and whatnot, so that he couldn't see her and couldn't contact her. She finds out he's actually alive, and he's not just anybody. He's Whitey Bulger's getaway driver.
Uh-huh.
Whitey Bulger, who, if you caught the news in the States over the last year, is this enormous, powerful Boston crime boss.
Yep.
Who's being tried now for 19 murders, okay, and so on. They caught him in San Diego last year. Okay. Now I find out that my actual father-in-law is an ex-getaway driver for Whitey Bulger. Okay, the mob. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, but the thing is, here's what's important about it. It took 6 years and 2 months for that to happen, and at exactly the right juncture, when the trend line went from nothing much going on to a mountain range.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
The upline, the point where the upline happened on the time track, is exactly where this guy showed up. And it just screwed up absolutely everything. She tried to make up my ex tried to make up for 30 years of lost time with Daddy, and it just at the expense of me and the kids and everything. And everything went completely sideways, and I was at least moderately amused because nobody knew there was going to be a big change at that point except me.
Yeah.
Because I had done the time track. And if you had said to me, what do you suppose is going to happen there? The last thing in the world I would have come up with was, oh, it's going to turn out that her real father is still alive, and he was a mob driver for getaways for a crook who was on the FBI's most wanted list right below Osama bin Laden.
Mm. Yes.
This guy, Whitey Bulger. Okay. So now I found that my father-in-law is Whitey Bulger's getaway driver. And every time we had a barbecue, the cops would be there, looking out for this guy's son, who was wanted for a bank robbery. I guess the apple didn't fall too far from the tree.
No.
No.
And now I understood why my mother-in-law and an adopted father-in-law had tried to keep this guy away from her for 30 years.
Now,
because he had 4 other children, all by different women, none of whom he married. Okay,
yeah.
And two of them were in rehab. One was in detox, and the other one, there was a warrant out for arrest for a bank robbery. Okay, now, if this isn't the universe having a good laugh at my expense, I don't know what is.
Paul, we've got the
time tracks in front of us here.
You sent us over kindly a lot of time tracks for, lots of different things. Some of them specific to us that we asked for, and some of them are, I don't know if you did them for us or if they were just out there. But I'm going to put a couple of these onto the website so people can download them. And we've got links to you so they can download from there. Do you want to explain how they work?
Yeah, I will. Just one quick second though before I do that. Any of the ones that we talk about on the show, I will be glad to email to any of your listeners who drops us a note at projectmerlin.com. And
Lovely.
since I'd like a copy of those, I will send them as PDFs to that person. And it would probably be good if at least the ones we talk about on the show get posted online so they can actually take a look at them or download them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And there are, I think I sent you a total of something like, I'm going to guess and say 30 or 35 of these.
There was quite a few.
Okay.
Yeah.
You sent. I'm looking at my own. I'm looking at my personal one at the moment, Paul.
Before we do yours, let me jump in and do one before that.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you
This is
explain how to read them? Because anybody who's downloaded them will be staring at them.
I will. I will tell you how to read them in the context of this particular one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. This is David Cameron's.
Right, I'll grab that one. Excuse my shuffling. That's it there. Okay.
Nice one.
And you guys know better than I do that his first real important appearance in the hierarchy of things
Yeah.
was about 2 or 3 years ago when things changed sufficiently in your politics that he became prime minister.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you look at David's run, you see that on the top line there's some activity. It's sort of intermittent, but no big deals.
Yeah. There's
In
a little
fact,
bit of a spike there towards the end of 2003.
Yeah, about roughly 03.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't know how that ties into his political life because I didn't go back and make a study of it. However, I do know that after 06 or thereabout, things quieted down for 4 years or so. Not a whole lot.
Yeah, we
going
can see
on
that.
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, boom! About 2 years ago, roughly.
Yeah.
Okay, things changed.
That's right.
When did he win the election? Was that 2011? Was it May last year?
I think it probably
Yeah,
was.
it was a year ago this month, I think.
Yeah.
What a surprise!
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you didn't know how to read this, and somebody said to you, "Well, looking at this, you see there's a consistent level of activity on the top line with some peaking going on in 03.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the big stuff doesn't start until the middle line toward the end, where there's a year's worth of big stuff.
Yeah.
And then beginning in 2012, toward the end of the year, which we're not that far away from now, all hell breaks loose.
Yep.
The trend line goes crazy from,
totally.
let's say, maybe halfway through 2012,
Yeah.
Yeah.
all the way out to 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm looking at it now.
It's
Yeah.
huge.
It really gets interesting.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a quick question, Paul?
Okay, now wait,
Go on.
I want to get this out first.
Okay.
Now, Sarkozy just got thrown out of office yesterday.
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason being that this austerity that was put in place both in Great Britain and in France,
Yep.
okay, it's not going over real well.
Not
No.
really.
In
People
fact,
aren't taking to it.
All the studies have shown now that the Americans who put money into the
Yeah.
market and into the into the economy are actually doing much better than all the countries that went into serious austerity, because austerity is probably not the way to solve this problem, because in order to get an economy kick-started these days,
Yeah.
you have to have consumers buying stuff.
Correct. Yeah.
And if they don't have any money to buy anything, nobody's going to be increasing business, hiring more people, because their business is down. What are they going to go hire people for?
We talked about this a lot.
And rich people who own businesses are not going to hire people just for the hell of it. They're going to hire people when their business requires it. And if nobody's buying stuff, it's not going to require it. So what happens? Stagnation.
Yeah.
The economy drops like crazy. Okay.
Right.
The gross national product drops. Okay, you end up having a serious recession going on, or worse.
Yeah.
Okay, and in Europe, partly because of the euro and partly because of just bad management of things on the part of a few countries over there, you can figure which ones, because they're exactly the ones you would have thought.
We may have mentioned them on more than one occasion on this show.
Greece and Italy and France.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and Spain. Okay, not you guys so much, but if posterity is not the solution, and Sarkozy got thrown out largely because of that, there's going to be problems going on for David Cameron, because he instituted exactly the same kind of thing, and it's not working.
Really?
Okay. I'm sure you noticed.
I may just point out, with a degree of sarcasm, you don't need to be a fortune teller to predict that one.
Okay, but on this time track,
Yes.
which goes from 2001 to 2018,
Uh-huh.
and if this had been run 10 years ago, it would have looked exactly the same way as it looks right now.
Okay.
Okay, because the when you run it isn't important. It's the date it's run from that's important. And this one is capturing the time pattern for the years beginning in October of 1966, October 9th, which happens to be when David Cameron arrived. Okay, so this would have shown the same pattern with the same big changes in the same places if we had run it 20 years ago.
Well, you've answered my question. You've got the Genesis in the top left-hand corner. It says Genesis 10th of 9th, 1966. I'm assuming that's when he was born, was it? I wondered what your first event was going to be.
It is. It's
Right.
when he was born. In
Right.
the top left-hand corner of all of these time tracks.
Right, that's your Genesis date.
Is what we call the Genesis date. The Genesis date is when did it begin? So, in the Iranian situation, I used the Iranian Revolution when Khomeini came back in 79, and when the students took over the U.S. Embassy in late 79 as the Genesis dates for Iran. Okay?
Right.
Uh-huh.
You could also probably use, among other things, you could probably use when Pahlavi, the former Shah of Iran, stepped down, or even when he came into power, which was largely a CIA, job.
We're aware of it.
I think back in the 50s, but I don't remember exactly what the date was. But if you took those key dates and Pahlavi's birthday and Khomeini's birthday, you'd get patterns that pretty much match the ones for the revolution and the takeover of the embassy, because one of the things that we found when we started doing this is that if you run dates that are all part of the same story, okay, they all tell the same story.
That's what I was going to ask you. So they all match.
In their own unique fashion. Each one of the key dates around a given situation will tell a very similar timeline of events, and any one of them will tell you that. And if you use all of them, let's say 3 or 4 time tracks tied into the same situation. So, for instance, that would be a husband and a wife's birthday, the first date they had sex, or the first date they met, and the date they got married. If you run that set of dates, if those people are going to have children or break up, you're going to see where it's going to be in time and where the big explosions are going to be, and you'll be right better than 8 times out of 10.
Can I just say then, so just to clarify this, if we were to do a time track for, let's say, Lee Harvey Oswald, Jack Ruby, and JFK, they would all have a peak in 1965, probably.
They would all, well, they might have a peak, or they might show the very beginning or the very end of an enormous trend line.
Yes. Right. But there would be some degree of correlation, at least around that time.
What there would be, see here, David Cameron's run is a good example again. If you printed this thing out and you tacked it to the wall, and you stood back about 6 or 8 feet like it was an eye chart.
Yeah.
Your eye is not going to see much on the top line. Yeah. It's going to see this big black spot on the second line about 2/3 of the way across. And then the whole bottom line, it's going to see this big black thing, okay, going across. And if only looking at that, somebody said to you, well, where are the change points? Where are the points on that pattern where whatever's going on is going to get different in some really significant way? Where are they in time? No matter who's looking at it, assuming that they're not blind, Okay, they're going to see the same places,
Yeah.
the same time slots. Okay, and those time slots are going to be the right ones, better than 8 times out of 10 over 23 years of doing this.
That's pretty good odds compared to, let's say, luck or chance.
Well, you know what's interesting about mathematics, and most people don't pay much attention to this, but I'll tell you a little secret. One of the reasons why things like prediction markets, and there's a good one out there from Ireland called InTrade. Okay, you may know about it.
I've not heard of that.
Okay, InTrade. Okay, it's InTrade, INTRADE.com. Okay, InTrade is actually selling futures, like futures contracts that you'd sell in some commodity market. They're selling future contracts on what's going to happen in things like the U.S. election.
Right.
And those prediction markets are going to be right more often than polls.
Ah.
You know why? Because I'll give you an example, and this is an actual mathematical fact. Let's say you had an aquarium bowl, not a huge one, but a little aquarium, the kind of that you'd put on a corner of a bureau or something, that kind, not with all of the air machines and stuff to pump it. Just you got a goldfish bowl with 2 goldfish in it. It's a pretty good sized bowl.
Yeah.
And instead of goldfish, you filled it with marbles.
Okay.
And you showed that to 20 people and said, how many marbles are in this jar?
I was talking about this earlier today.
Okay.
Okay.
If you then took the answers,
Mm-hmm.
added them all up and divided by 20, you'd come up within 10% or less of the actual number of marbles that's in that bowl.
Yeah.
And you know why? Because you're putting people to the test. You're saying, okay, we're not polling you about who's going to vote and who you're going to vote for. We're asking you to put your money where your mouth is, because that's like asking you who you voted for after you voted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you ask somebody, who are you going to vote for, and you got to put money down, which is what the prediction markets insist on. They're not just guessing; they're guessing with money. Okay. You're being asked to make a bet of who's going to win and who's going to lose. When you do that, the mathematics, the function of the mathematics and the psychology changes, because it's no longer speculative. It's now you've put your money where your mouth is, so you really do believe that, okay, and you're going to stick with it. When you do the divisions and whatnot, you will come up within 10 percentage points or less of the actual number. Well, in the prediction markets, if you take a look at what's going on in the U.S. election, and all the people who are running, all the whole sideshow that we had over here, Herman the black guy with the Pizza King, and what's her name, Michelle Bachmann, who didn't know that the Concord Bridge of the American Revolution wasn't in New Hampshire; it was in Massachusetts. Okay, and thought the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere was to warn everybody, warn the British about the Americans, when it was actually the other way around.
Yeah.
When you put money down on those things, all of a sudden the likelihood of accuracy goes up, and whoever's getting the most money in the betting is probably going to be the winner. Okay, and more accurately than polls. So if you take a look at these prediction markets, which haven't been around all that long, but they've been around long enough now that you can take a look at what their track record is. Their track record is absolutely astonishing. Okay, you could have predicted all kinds of events just by knowing who put money down on what thing to happen or not happen. Okay, so for instance, right now, Obama has something like, I don't know what it is exactly. He's got 60 percentage points of thereabouts that he's going to win the re-election, and Romney is down in the murk someplace.
Yeah.
And all of these other people that were running, they all were down under 10% all along. So you could have written them all out at the very beginning and said none of these are going anywhere and be right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we're not using InTrade, but it's amusing that InTrade is very close to what we've been doing with this, because I can't tell you for sure what's going to happen to David Cameron starting late this year, but I can tell you it ain't going to be what's been going on. Now, what are the possibilities? Well, he could find himself in a no-confidence situation where they have another election, and he gets thrown out. Okay. Or it could be something like a health incident. Okay. He could come down with some kind of illness. Or he could be, or the plane flying him around could have, not make it from wherever it's going to where it's supposed to be. Okay. Or his marriage could go south. Or, I mean, you could make a list of the kinds of things, and if you knew what his history was, if you could go back to 7 years or so before the end of 2012, so back to 2005 or 04, and we know that if you look on the top line in that 03, 04, 05 window, those are the only other spikes on the page. So therefore, I would go back and say, okay, what was this guy doing about 7 years ago? Because something about that is going to change. Now, for all I know, that's when he became an MP. I don't know, because I didn't go back in his history to find that out. Or when he entered the hierarchy in politics, which eventually gets you to a position where you might be
most likely.
But I'll tell you this much: there would be a change at that point in the past that would foreshadow some of the things coming up in the next few years, because something that started back then is about to hit the wall.
Okay. Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about the spikes, Paul. Does it mean there's no way of telling if it's a positive or a negative?
That's right.
Event.
That's exactly right. There is no way. I'll tell you, we were interviewed once by one of the news reporters for NBC. A fellow named Fred Briggs, back in I think it was the early '90s, late '80s. Fred came up and did 4.5 hours of interviewing us, of which 2 minutes and 8 seconds got on the air. Okay, out of 4.5 hours. Okay, but anyway, Fred had it exactly right. He says, so it's not so much that it's going to be good or bad, it's just that it ain't going to be dull. And I said, that's it. You got it. It's not going to be dull. And it's not going to be like what's been going on. When you see a big change in one of these time tracks, either it's a launch of a timeline that starts and then goes on for several years, or the end of a trend line that's been going on for several years and then abruptly stops. Or you got a trend line that's fairly even, and then all of a sudden you get to a couple of years where there's significant spikes going on.
I'm looking at mine.
And don't go on after it. You can pin those down and say, well, right at these points, and a couple of others.
I'm looking at the chart you did for me, Paul. It looks like the Rockies, I have to be honest.
Show me.
It looks like the Rockies. You're talking about the years coming up.
Some of the historical ones and the ones coming up as well. Basil's looks
it's reversed. Almost exactly the reverse. As a matter of fact, let me point something out that you wouldn't have
What's
noticed.
going on there?
I'm putting them over the top of each other so I can
point something out. What did you just say?
I'm putting them over the top of each other so that I can compare the two.
If you put one over the other, they fill in all the empty space.
Yeah, they are. They're opposites almost.
Wow.
They are almost exactly opposites.
What does that mean?
Do explain. Use us as guinea pigs.
Well, listen, if you guys were of that persuasion, or even just from a business standpoint.
Business, definitely, Paul.
Business.
One has what the others lack.
Intelligence, then, in my case.
You don't share the same. You don't share the same skills. And oftentimes when you put two people together like that, if they can keep from killing each other, they can work really well as a team at things that neither one of them necessarily would have been good at alone.
Oh my God!
Interestingly,
that is interesting.
to try and give you more kudos than you've already got. Yeah, we kind of set up this show because the two of us are complete opposites. I'm complete uber atheist. Basil's quite religious, and we argue about that constantly.
You're quite skeptical, and I'm quite a believer.
Yeah, he's the believer, and we're a bit like Mulder and Scully, basically. I'm the scientific one, and he's the gullible one.
What do you think of that, Paul?
but sort of to the extreme.
Yeah.
To live that way.
It is very extreme. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, there's also something else to notice. If you take a look at the date when you started the podcast,
yeah, I've got one printed out for that,
and compare that to Basil's run, for instance, you'll notice in the current period of time, they end at the same point or change at the same point, almost exactly. Okay, and yours goes exactly the reverse of that. Your activity started in the same years, but then at the 2012 mark, okay, it shifts into high gear and then continues actually unbroken from beginning of 2010 all the way out to 2017.
Yeah.
There's no break in the trend line. It's just that the trend line is made up of two different time models, and that's the other change point. When when you've got a time track that's got a whole bunch of little twos.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
It becomes a whole bunch of little U's. The whole quality of the endeavor changes. So, in other words, with respect, let's say, to the podcast, there's a significant change coming up because there's a significant shifting of gears in terms of who's calling the shots or who's making the bigger decisions or whatever it is. I'll tell you this much about the date for the podcast.
Yeah.
You could have picked a better one.
Oh, right. Boy.
If you'd been asking me when to start that, I would have told you about 2 weeks later, and if I showed you the difference between what it looks like on the 15th of March and what it looked like, say, on the 30th, you'd become apoplectic.
Actually, incidentally, when we started it, we didn't have any guests, and our first guest, I think, was on the 28th.
That's very interesting, because one of the things that here's a good example of what we do for clients.
Yeah,
client comes in and says to us, "Okay, I'm starting a new business. I'm starting a new venture. I'm doing a spin-off of my old business.
Sure.
I have to sign a contract. I'm buying a house or selling a house, or I'm getting married.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, find me a date in the future that will maximize that activity. In the case of a wedding, you probably would want something pretty benign.
Yeah.
Or you'd want something pretty benign for, let's say, elective surgery.
Yeah.
But if you were launching a business or putting something out on the net, you were a record producer and you had a new artist under your wing, and you wanted to get them out into the public eye at a time when they're liable to really resonate well, you'd pick a moment that's entirely different than the one for the elective surgery. What we would do is look forward in time through these time tracks, since we can run them for next year and the year after that, 10 years from now, or 100 years ago, okay, to see what it looked like when such and such was going on. Okay, for instance, on the election day of Lincoln, could you see the Civil War? Okay, those kinds of questions. Okay, and what we found when we do that is that if you go back and find some of those, or you pick a moment in the future on purpose because of the pattern that's going on that day and the pattern that goes on over the next, say, several years, you're going to get a different measure of activity in the actual event that you do on that day than if you'd done it willy-nilly and just done it without any knowledge that there are any patterns going on, okay? Because then you're stuck with whatever the cat brought in.
Yeah.
Okay. It's entirely different. Now, I'll tell you something interesting about this. My entire interest in this stuff began on the 15th of March, 1967, when I launched a show.
Wow.
That was the first.
That's the same date.
Show.
This is turning into Back to the Future.
45 years ago, yes.
Yeah.
And what that was this. I lined up a bunch of college radio stations.
Yeah.
All up and down the East Coast that were not otherwise linked. Okay. There was no network. Okay. I put together a network of college radio stations to carry a program on this subject matter on March 15th, 1967.
Wow.
Okay. If you go and read the bio stuff, you'll find it. Or if you go to Facebook, you'll find the whole diatribe about what happened then. Mm-hmm. But on that date, 45 years ago, 45 years before you started this program, that was the date I started a program. Wait, it gets better. When I started on that day, we did a couple of other programs later on after that, tying these college radio stations together by what they called landlines, because there's no way to satellite the signal. Okay,
correct,
landlines.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what turned into National Public Radio.
Oh my God.
3 years later, NPR launched to do programs just like that.
So
we were the first ones to ever do it. Nobody had ever done a link up of college radio stations. And the first time we did this on that March 15th, 1967, there were maybe 8 or 10 stations. When we did it the next time, there were a little more. Now there's a whole link up of college radio stations that carry stuff, and it's called National Public Radio.
Wow.
Blimey.
My God.
So that was interesting. When I saw that you started on that date, I chuckled.
Yeah.
Is that a good day for us, though, Paul, or a bad day?
No, that's that. Now there's a difference.
Yeah.
Okay. It happens to be an anniversary for me. But was the date in 2012 have been a particularly good one? Not really. It's in fact what you guys.
What made it a bad one, Paul?
It's not a case of good or bad. It's a case of active. What it says basically is, here's what it says. It says to get this thing really rolling, you're going to have to bust your ass more than you would have if you'd picked a better date. And this.
Yeah.
And the person of the two of you who has the better time track going into the future is the one who's liable to have the better ideas about how to do that.
I'm pointing at Basil right now and saying "in your face," but I'm doing it quietly.
Okay. Because what it says is, it says that the person with the time track that's about to really rock it off, kind of like David Cameron's, okay, is the one who's able to come up with the better ideas at the moment. Or, and this is the other problem. Let's say, you'll notice that not only is there a change in late 2012 on your time track that goes from little 2s to little u's, okay, almost exactly at that point at the end of 2012, the predominance of the pattern changes from one time model to the other. The little 2s.
Yeah, can you explain the difference between the 2s and the U's?
Here's what they represent. They represent what we call fluidity, or creativity, or imagination, or ideas, but not solid stuff.
Yeah.
Not the kind of thing that you can put hold in your hand. Okay, that's the problem.
Yeah.
It has more of an airy-fairy quality to it that isn't really grounded. Great ideas, no grounding.
Yeah.
When the U's start to show up, there's where you get infrastructure, money, options, places to go do this, other things to carry it, other ways to market it, et cetera, et cetera. The structural stuff, and by the way, the longer-term cycles, the little 2s very short-term cycles, kind of like sunrise and sunset, or full moons and new moons, that kind of rapidity. The U's represent the appearance of these very much longer cycles, the 7-year ones and the 21-year ones, and excuse me, there where there's a culmination of long-term cycles all peaking in the same years, and the 2s represent short-term cycles culminate in the same years. What happens on your time track, Mark, is that it goes from all 2s to all U's, and the transition point is the end of this year.
Yeah, it looks like I was thinking for about 4 years, and then I've got 5 years worth of doing in front of me.
Almost. That would be a good way of interpreting it.
Same line.
And
how odd. What is interesting, Paul, just sorry to interrupt, go on.
Let me finish. To get the podcast to really happen where you want it to, you might be the better overseer, let's say, of the direction you might want to go in, than Basil might be, wherein he might have been the prime mover in the early going.
But he's right. That's the way it is. You do oversee most of the business.
I do a little bit.
And technical side of it. And all of it, really, while I smoke.
Yeah. Basil mostly smokes, while I mostly program websites.
Well, there's a good example.
You're spot on there, Paul. It's uncanny. It's actually uncanny what you're saying.
And the thing is, you guys know that we had no previous conversations.
No, we only spoke for the first time an hour or so ago.
It is a bit crazy, isn't it?
It is actually quite accurate. I'm looking at the podcast one, and the podcast one, you've got... and which one is it now? Oh, on my one, you've kind of got the podcast one starting. My change is also sort of 2012, and that's kind of when the podcast one changes as well, roughly speaking.
Exactly. And the thing is, those 3 time tracks, yours and Basil's and the podcast, are all connected. They're all elements of, that's like the husband and the wife and the marriage date and the first sex, wedding date, and being able to figure where the change points are going to come. They all have the same change points.
Yeah, I can put them up.
Except that the 2 of you are inverse. One of them has activity where the other one lacks the activity.
Yeah.
Now, basically, that is the better situation than, say, to have 2 people who have activity in the same places and lack of activity in the same places.
Makes sense.
Okay?
Right.
Because nobody knows what to do when things go sideways in a situation like that, because neither one of them have any activity going on. Here, one can always catch a ride on what the other one is doing.
Yeah.
Well, we kind of do that by the hour, to be honest.
It's a fact, Paul.
And you can understand.
Yeah.
Okay. This is why I said, given an hour or so, you guys are going to pick this up because it's not that complicated. Now I'll bet you could go back and look at the other 34 of these things that I sent you and spot the changes and all the rest of it without even having to talk to me.
Absolutely.
Now, you may need me to put the fine point on it, or the nuanced stuff, because I've been doing it for 25 years.
Yeah, you probably know a thing or two by now.
15 or 20 years before that, in a more manual fashion, which definitely isn't astrology. Okay, and you look at this and say, well, wait a minute. First of all, this works too often. Okay, I can see exactly what he saw because now I can see it since I've been told how to look at it. But the thing is, if you look at the other 30 some odd of these, you're going to be able to spot the change points and what was going on in the past and where the changes are going to be in the future with a fair degree of accuracy, even now.
Yeah, I'm looking at the one. I'm looking at the one you did for me, and it's interesting. I'm going back through history trying to remember some things that happened, and I remember if you look at the one, I'm sure everybody can download this from the website. 2004, you've got there as a big spike, and a big block of stuff.
And not only a big
actually,
spike, but something that then began a couple of years of activity.
Yeah, well, oddly enough, that's actually when I sold my little housing portfolio in England and moved to Ireland and bought an old farmhouse and started renovating it and basically just got out of my old rather awful job for an American defense contractor.
Okay, so you would agree that spot on that line is prominent and matches an actual big change in your life.
It's probably one of the biggest spikes in the last 10 years. It is pretty accurate, yeah.
Okay, imagine if you had that 20 years ago, or 15 years ago, or even, well, not 5 goes far enough back, but anyway, 10 years ago, you knew how to read these things. You'd say, well, around the end of 03, beginning of 04, there's going to be a big change going on. And here's something else. If you look immediately below that on the next line, you'll find the next spike, and you'll also find the next long chain of continuous activity, like the one on the top line, although the one on the top line isn't as long. It only goes on for 2 or 3 years. But on the middle line, you have a chain of activity that starts out as these little twos, but very continuous. No breaks in the line. And then at the end of 2012, beginning of 2013, the complexion of things change, and the tempo perhaps, and the level of productivity and ability to actually get things accomplished, or get things to happen.
I'm seeing it here, looking at it.
And you both show those changes at almost exactly the same point.
How odd?
Because when you take a look at both the podcast and you take a look at Basil's run, the next change point, is around 2013, and then from that point on, you fill in the empty space that he has on that bottom line.
I can see that empty space.
I see he's got an empty space there. Yeah, I was going to ask about that because maybe he was going to be in a coma for 5 years or something.
It looks like it.
There's one other thing I want to point out about that.
Yeah.
And that is, we only ran 3 of these, the 2 of you and the podcast.
Yeah.
Okay. Imagine how unlikely it is mathematically.
Yeah.
When these activity points could be anywhere on the page with any degree of strength or non-strength, they could be any place except if we had to mark in where the change points are on these 3 time tracks. I'll bet you they match up at about the 70 or 80 percentile of being exactly the same years.
Yeah.
So in other words, where the changes show up, because there's obviously an abrupt change on the podcast. There's obviously an abrupt change on Basil's.
Yeah.
There is a change of quality on yours, but it's the same spot.
Yeah.
It's end of 2012, beginning of 2013.
Yeah.
Okay. And all 3 of those places absolutely match up one to the other.
Yes.
Except it happens to be 3 dates plucked out of the sky.
Yeah, completely random.
Run through this program, and they ought to be random.
Now, let me just ask you a question there.
If there was nothing to this, the likelihood of those matching spots is so unlikely.
You've been so accurate.
Yeah.
It would have 200 zeros after it.
You've been so accurate. It's unreal.
We've got three tracks here, myself, Basil, and the podcast itself. And as you say, all of them have a big change towards the end of 2012. And I wanted to ask you, a lot of people are talking about 2012, December 21st, all that kind of stuff. Have you noticed any correlation between ours and lots of other people's or other events at the end of 2012?
Well, that's a very, very good question, because one of the things that we have concluded about all of this, and one of the time tracks I sent you is marked end time.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let me see if I can dig that one out. I think you've got that one, but I think it's in there.
What we did there was, many years ago we did this, probably back, I'm going to guess and say middle 90s or late 90s, we originally ran that. There was all of this hullabaloo about December 21st, 2012, end of the Mayan calendar,
Yep.
Yep.
Well, what we did was we said, well, let's let's take that date as a genesis date and run it forward and backward from that date, see what it looks like. See if all of a sudden things after 2012 go crazy.
Yeah.
Or stop. Okay.
Okay.
Now, what we found was the years leading up to 2012 were the years when things were going to go crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you know what? Between climate change and monetary change and the almost Great Depression, okay, which may still not be over. Okay, certainly not over on your side of the pond.
No.
And probably isn't going to be over on ours either. My personal hunch is, because when you take that end time run and then you compare it to the USA run from July 1776 and you look at the 2012 portion of that, you'll notice that right at the point where the end time run ends, the USA run goes crazy for several years. Okay, now
right.
what could that be? Well, in the best of all worlds, it would be something like Obama winning re-election and then getting to pass a lot of the good stuff that he got blocked from getting past the first time around.
Right.
I don't. We're not that smart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's likely to happen there? Well, one of the possibilities, because if you take a look at the Obama-Biden run, which I also sent you,
yeah, I think that's
you'll
about 2
notice
pages
that
before that.
right at the beginning of 2013, the trend line drops like a rock, okay, and comes to an abrupt halt. That's not real good to be seeing when you're looking at the president and vice president of a country.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, and any more so than the David Cameron run looks like at the end of 2012, beginning of 2013. Same spot, by the way.
Yeah, exactly,
okay?
Yeah.
Because there's enough angry people over here that if nobody took a pot shot at Obama in the first term, if he gets reelected, they're going to be so pissed.
Yeah.
The ones who don't like him already and think he's, you know, he's the beginning of the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, with words to that effect, the likelihood of him getting shot at or some other thing like that goes up exponentially.
All right.
Okay, the likelihood of something happening at the beginning or early part of the second term is better than the likelihood of something happening in the first term.
Yeah.
Because they were mad that the first Afro-American president happened, okay, and all the racism that people have been not admitting to over here.
Yeah.
Okay, that have been, well, he's not really born in the States. He was really born in, you know, and he's really a Muslim.
Yeah.
You know, he may not admit it, but he's a Muslim.
Yeah.
All of that nonsense are just code words for racism. It's easier saying that than saying, you know, son of a bee, I can't believe that we elected a black guy.
Yeah.
And, you know, if Bush hadn't been so bad a president, we would never have elected the first Afro-American president. What happened was people ran so far in the other direction that they elected him by accident.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's almost as though we weren't quite ready for a young Afro-American president, and this is a pretty bright guy. Okay, I mean, never mind all the nonsense that's been said about him. Okay, we could be in real bad shape if he had let the auto industry go under and a whole bunch of other things. And the fact that our level of productivity and increase in the gross national product and whatnot is much better than Europe, where austerity went into play, that it's going to turn out that he was right about how to solve this or handle this problem, okay, even if in the long run it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Okay, it worked a lot better than the people who, you know, pulled back on the reins and said, you know, enough of this. Let's cut everything. Let's cut every product increase, every salary increase.
Yeah.
You know, etc.
Like we
I think
did here.
growth in Europe is supposed to be in almost in negative digits this coming year.
Yeah, because there's too much austerity here for growth.
In the U.S., it's going to be a weak, maybe 3% or something like that. But it ain't negative digits.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so putting money into the economy was the smarter thing to do.
Yeah.
The only problem is we didn't put enough in. It's not that we put in too much, we didn't put in enough.
Right.
If we'd put in more, we would have been in better shape. And if we hadn't been fighting this bunch of do-nothing Republicans who were voted against things that they proposed until he got on board, and the moment he got on board, they said, we're not going to run for that. We can't give him any, incentives. Okay, so let's vote against our own proposals. I'll tell you, in the America of 2012, Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan, two very conservative Republicans, couldn't get elected because they'd be deemed too radical and too socialistic.
Okay.
So things have become nutty over here, and the 20 percentile that can't stand this guy. Okay, they can't stand him. They're also the ones who didn't graduate from 6th grade and have guns. Okay, they're the ones running around with guns. Yeah. Okay, which is all we need. So when you see the U.S. go crazy in the next, say, 4 or 5 years, okay, it wouldn't surprise me if the economics took another bad turn, or somebody took maybe even a successful shot at Obama. Okay, et cetera, because it looks like wherein we may have weathered the worst part of the last couple of years, when it doesn't look like that's likely to happen over the next couple. And while I'd love to say, I'd love to say, well, with all due respect, it could go the other way. I wouldn't give it better than maybe a 20% chance, maybe not even that high, but no more than a 20% chance of the good stuff happening, because it could, as you noticed earlier, it's not a matter of good or bad, it's a matter of how big is the change going to be.
Yeah.
Change is likely to be enormous.
Just going back to I remember I originally asked you about 2012, and I don't know. Did I get a clear answer? Is something going on at the end of 2012?
Here, let me tell you what we found back in probably the late 90s, when we first ran the End Times run, that December 21st, 22nd, 2012, and we saw all of the yada going on from about 2006 or 7 on.
Can I ask what your genesis date was for the End Times run?
We used the end of the Mayan calendar date as the Genesis date.
Right.
So we ran it backwards and forwards to see what it looked like in the years leading up to it. Okay. So you're looking at the December 22nd, 2012 date, run forwards and backwards from that date, and the several years leading up to 2012 are far more exotic than the years after that.
Right.
Okay. So we concluded that all the big stuff, the stuff that everybody was worried about 2012, wasn't going to wait till 2012 to happen. It was going to be happening from about 2007 on, 2006 on.
Kind of has done, I
suppose. It actually shows the big peaks in 09, 010, 011, and then it drops off. Well, if you go back and you take a look at what was going on, that was this economic fiasco that almost brought the whole planet to a stop. With these swaps and defaults and games Wall Street was playing, and playing with Europe as well as with America. They sold that junk all over the planet, basically.
Right.
And the thing is, it practically ended the economy of most of the Western nations, and certainly put a serious dent in the gross national product of all those countries, except maybe China, that's now beginning to have some financial problems, partly because they own all of our debt. That's not helping things out. But anyway, in terms of that 2012 run, we concluded that at about 2011 and a half, 2012, 12 and a half, in there someplace, we were actually going to be more likely at the end of several years of chronic change going on.
Yes.
There was, and what we noticed back in the 90s, before we even thought about the Mayan calendar, is that we noticed at the end of the last decade of the 20th century and the first decade of the 21st, there was a disproportionate number, here's what you were asking, a disproportionate number of individuals that we were running where there was big stuff going on in the years 2006 to 2012. Okay. And we concluded that there was going to be something that was of a worldwide nature that was going to affect something like 2 out of every 3 people on the planet. It did not occur to us, however, when we started thinking of things like, you know, pandemics and incoming asteroid and first meeting with extraterrestrials and, you know, climate change, you know, sinking the entire planet. Okay. It never crossed our mind, wait a minute, suppose this is financial. Suppose that 2 out of every 3 people is going to find themselves with a lower standard of living at the end of that run of years than at the beginning of it. And you know what?
That sounds right.
That's exactly what it turned out to be.
Now, speaking of...
2 out of every 3 people... Go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking of slightly more out-of-this-world things, have you ever done any runs on... I'm not sure what the hell you'd use as a baseline, as a Genesis event, but have you ever done any runs on things like first contact or anything completely, I don't know, out there?
Well, here's the problem. The date I think I did run once was Roswell.
Oh, yeah.
Because Roswell was the first incident where this stuff was actually came into the public consciousness.
Yeah.
Okay. And I've run a couple of others because I got a chance a few years ago to meet Betty Hill. Betty and Barney, they were an interracial couple who lived in New Hampshire.
Yes, I saw the film about them. Yes.
That's right, Interrupted Journey.
That's right, I did, That's great.
They were the ones who had the first abduction sort of event involving extraterrestrials. In fact, an artist friend of mine named David Baker, David C. Baker, you can Google him, okay? He did the first sketches of the aliens that Betty and Barney Hill met, and it's those sketches that constitute what we now call grays.
Yes.
The big black eyes and, you know, the et cetera, the little heads and the big heads and the little bodies and the black eyes. The teardrop-shaped heads and so on. David Baker did the first sketches of that. You can actually find them online. I got a chance to see them in his garage about 30 years ago because David and I were both painting at the time, doing art painting, and traveling around the East Coast art circuit selling our paintings. And David and I actually traded paintings. I have a few of his. He has a few of mine. And he brought me out to the garage to show me these charcoal sketches he had done that were described by Betty and Barney during the questioning session they had with therapists. Okay, so you could take the Betty and Barney Hill incident, which was in September of '61.
That's right.
Or Roswell, that was in October '47. Okay, and I'm personally fond of the Billy Meyer stuff because I don't think all of those photographs are faked.
Yeah.
Okay, I know a lot about photography, and when you have reflections on the underside of those very clear pictures of craft, it's easy enough to hang something from a string, but how do you get the underside reflections?
Yeah, all right.
That's a whole other story. So and I can't see how a partly crippled Swiss farmer with a camera that had some problems would have cooked this all up, and why?
Didn't he admit to faking
why would
some?
He have bothered? Okay. He may, you know what? He may have faked a few, but you know what? I did a show probably in the 80s. I was in the green room for an hour and a half with Uri Geller.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I've met Uri Geller. He's nice. I like him.
Does he still look like he needs a good meal?
Yeah.
He still looks like he needs a good meal, and he's still awesomely fit, and he still looks the same age.
Well, he's an amazing guy. He actually struck some keys that I had in my hand, and when I went home, they wouldn't open the door anymore. And James Randi, the magician, who's been trying to debunk all of this stuff for years, said to me, "Hey, well, you didn't see it, but he actually took out pliers." Not a chance.
No.
Those keys never left my hand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I tried them in the door before I went to the show, and when I came back, they were bent enough that they would no longer fit in the lock. So I think Geller. I think the problem with people like Geller, and maybe with Billy Meyer too, is that when you're asked to perform on command, I think some of these abilities aren't always available to you, and you better have a little sleight of hand in your back pocket to make up for the times when it's not working.
It's a bit like going to a comedian and saying, "Say something funny."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, I used to sit and have drinks with a guy named Jacob Cohen, who was getting back into show business after having spent 20 years doing roofing and siding out on Long Island. As a contractor.
Yeah.
He had been in the what they used to call the Borch Belt up in upstate New York as a comedian in the late 40s and 50s. But he had been out of the business now for 20 years, and he was just getting started again. And he would sit there and he'd run jokes and ask me what I thought of him. And I thought he was hilarious, especially when he said he just bought this name and he wanted to know if it was going to work. And I asked him what the name was. He says, "It's Rodney Dangerfield." And
really?
I said, "No kidding." Yes, his real name is Jacob Cohen, and I used to sit and let him run jokes at a bar in Manhattan in the early 60s when he was just getting started again.
Wow, I know him well. Yeah, I know the guy.
What a great guy! I mean, Rodney, the best.
It explains a lot about him, because he seemed to me at my age, he seemed to appear out of nowhere at a certain age. Quite a mature age, and I didn't see a lot of him before.
Well, that's right, and that's and the only reason the only reason he caught on the way he did, was because it was a timing phenomenon. He not using our stuff, but some people, what we call lucky people, I'm convinced, are people who instinctively recognize some of these patterns, even if it's unconsciously, and take advantage of it when the rest of us, for instance, when was the last time you made a big change of job or money when things were going really, really well?
I've heard you talk about this before. I think I've heard you talk about this before. It's a fantastic thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Why? When do we make changes? When we're unhappy.
Yeah.
When we're not happy with what's going on, and it's reached the boiling point, then we make changes.
Correct.
But just suppose you made changes when there was no reason to make them.
Yeah.
When everything was terrific.
I'm looking at my chart for 2004, which is exactly what I did in 2004 on that chart.
You made a change for no reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is that good or bad, Paul?
Right. Well, well, my sense of it is when you make a change and there's no reason to, you're more likely to make a change that turns out to be positive than the other way around.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, in 2004, on that chart that you made for me there, I had like a number of houses, and I had a job, and I had a shop, and I had people working for me. I had loads of money and everything else, and women and cars, and I sold everything and moved to a field.
Well, if you do that before things start to go south, then you've done it at a time that chances are is going to be advantageous.
Yeah, he's right. Because
I did that because I knew that the recession was coming, and I wanted to sell up.
If you had all that stuff, that would have been a liability when bad times would have come.
Yeah, well, that was my intention at the time. I wanted to sell up and get out.
Paul is right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you see what people don't understand generally about what we're doing is we're not trying to fortune tell. What we're trying to tell you is that there's better times and lesser times to make changes. The best example I can think of is high tide, low tide. If you're a shipbuilder,
Yep.
you want the tide to be in when you launch the ship, because otherwise you're probably going to ruin it.
Yeah.
You're going to pull it across the mud flats for 3/4 of a mile and rip the bottom out.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it would be smart to look at a tide table and find out when high tide is.
Yeah.
If you're a clam digger, you want exactly the reverse. So which is better, high tide or low tide?
It depends on your point of view.
Yeah.
Okay. It depends on which you need. Okay. Or suppose there's better times and lesser times to launch businesses or to have surgery. Okay.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you want to pick the one that's less likely to have any long-term repercussions, unless what you're trying to do is start something where you want long-term repercussions?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what we do for clients. We analyze dates when they did start things to see what the outcome is liable to be, and we get called to figure out a date in the future when they can do something that they want to do and get a jump start on that thing when everybody else would have done it willy-nilly when the spirit moved them, and probably when they're unhappy.
Paul,
Most people make changes when they are unhappy.
Paul, you've been so accurate with myself and Mark and everything you said about us. How can people in Europe contact you and maybe avail of your services?
Because you do offer this, don't you, as a service?
Yes, of course. Yeah, of course we do. I do individuals. Dr. Hart does corporations.
Interesting.
One of our clients, and I'm allowed to mention this because I've been given permission to mention.
Okay.
Is Bill Clinton's defense secretary.
Right.
Bill Cohen, who really knows where the bodies are buried. Okay. I mean, I haven't been able to grill Bill on the Roswell thing and a bunch of other stuff, but if there's a book of secrets, you can bet the Secretary of Defense knows where it is.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Bill is running a company in America and in Europe called the Cohen Group.
Yeah.
What they do is they advise corporations on going into a certain country to do business and what the likely prospects are and whether it's a good time to do that.
Yeah.
And so we've worked with Bill over the years. In fact, when he was a congressman on the committee that impeached Richard Nixon. He was on that committee, what they call the Peter Rodino committee from the 70s that impeached Nixon for Watergate. He was a congressperson on that committee. That's around the time I met him through his then girlfriend, a client of mine named Janet Langhart, who was a Boston television personality. Janet had me do a workup for Bill on whether if he ran for the Senate, he would win. I did, and he did, and he won, and he's never forgotten it. And Bill and I have gone many miles at this point, thanks to the fact that Janet had me do a run for him back in the 70s when all of what we now have here in graphical form was being done in a manual fashion from the top of my head. Okay. In other words, all of what, as George likes to put it, Dr. Hart likes to put it, what Merlin is what Paul used to do before we taught the computer to do it.
Yeah.
So, and how much, and Larry King once on a show said to me, he kind of leaned in and he squinted and he said, how much of this is astrology? And I kind of grin on my face and said, just enough to be intriguing. I like to think of it as applied astronomy.
Well, I think anybody listening will be most interested in contacting you, Paul. And but you're the so you're the person for the personal decisions.
Yeah,
right. I do the personal stuff. George does the corporate stuff. The best way to get in touch with us is if you're online. Just go to the website, which you said was blocked. But if you have a problem with it, go to Google. in any case, the website is projectmerlin.com.
Yeah.
If you go to Google and type in the Merlin Project, you'll get us in the first position in the query.
Yeah.
You can also go to the website Time Tracks. That's TIME, the word time, and then tracks spelled TRAKS, no C.
Yep.
Timetracks.org. There's a library of these things that we've been talking about. You can go in and look at them. A lot of it needs to be updated, but that's a function of the fact that we haven't had a lot of time to do that. We've been busy doing clients, and besides that, our service provider, our internet service provider, changed the format by which we can manipulate the site mechanics from something called front page to some other obscure thing that we've been having trouble manipulating. So what we're probably going to do in the next year is open another site, and if we do, if you go to the old address, you'll get it. Or what we'll probably do is do it under the new address, which is projectmerlin.com. So projectmerlin.com and timetracks.org if you're interested in contacting us.
Brilliant.
There's also a toll-free number.
Oh, give it. Yeah, hand it out.
Yeah. If you're in the States, the toll-free is 1 and then 866-298-7688. I'll give it to you again. 1-866-298-7688. If you're in the UK, you want to put 001 in front of that.
Yep.
Right.
And then dial 866.
Wow.
Yeah, you drop the first one.
298-768. So it's 001. Right, and then 866-298-7688. We also have a snail mail address, which nobody seems to use anymore, so I don't check it as frequently as I used to. But if you want to send us a postal note, okay, which I don't recommend because it's going to take ages for us to get back to you. But if you're not online, you're not hearing this.
If you're not online, you're not listening to a podcast generally.
I'll give it out anyway, just real quick. It's Box 1241. Box 1241, and it's in Seabrook, all one word, SEABRO, New Hampshire, NH. And the zip up here is 03874. Box 1241, Seabrook, New Hampshire, 03874. And those are the best ways to get in touch with us. I'm also on Facebook.
Oh, yes.
So is the project. You can go to the Merlin Project Research Group, Facebook, or just go to me. Yep. I'm hard to spell.
We'll put links to you and your Facebook profile and everything.
Yeah. Anyway, there you go. And
fantastic.
And you know what's fun about this? We spent a lot of time talking about you guys and the podcast. The next time we do this, we should get together and talk about some of the other 30 of these time tracks.
I imagine, like most people, were self-obsessed.
Well, listen, I mean, I'll bet you when we hang up from this conversation that you guys are going to look at each other and say, son of a gun, that's fascinating. He hit stuff he couldn't possibly have known.
We're saying it now.
We're
saying it now. It's just incredible.
And we had it ahead of time.
I'm looking at the stuff here. You sent us so many. And
it's like you know us.
I'm going to put these on the website. I'm going to put them all on as one file. People can download the whole thing. They're not too big. I mean, we've got Rupert Murdoch. We've got Dr. David Kelly.
By the way, just quickly in terms of Murdoch, since he's a big deal over there, does it look like the bottom has fallen out for Rupert?
It does indeed. Are you talking about on TV or on your chat?
Both.
Yeah. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Absolutely, I agree with you. And the only downside there is that one of the shows we do with some regularity, this Alan Combs show out of New York, which is heard on 100 and some odd Fox radio stations and on the net. It's streamed on the net every night. Is a Rupert Murdoch production. It's Fox News.
Cool.
Yep.
So, and I have to believe, just because I know the culture over there really well, okay, I have to believe that what they were doing with News of the World and whatnot,
they
were also doing here.
Oh yeah,
of course.
And when the U.S. Congress finds out that's what they've been doing, especially if Obama gets reelected, they're going to sail into Fox News. And my personal sense of this, because I've looked up Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh and people like that.
Oh yes, yeah.
That the extreme right-wing radio era is probably effectively over. Okay.
Brilliant.
I think I know who you mean.
You know that old thing, you can tell people a lie. You can tell all the people some of the time and some of the people all the time, but you can't tell all the people all the time. Well, Fox News is a public relations a gamble that there was going to be enough people who didn't graduate from 6th grade and carry a gun, okay, as listeners, and they have managed to market to those people, but they've been losing numbers significantly over the last few years.
I think I know what you mean.
True.
And it'll be so nice to get rid of all of that noise, okay, and get back to the people, or at least on their, they may not be telling the entire story, but they're not going out of their way to lie, okay? My son, the one who has the birthday of this other kid, interned at Fox News in New York for one whole summer, was so disgusted he changed his political stance.
Oh my God.
And he this little Republican. Now he's not so sure after spending the summer at Fox News.
Oh boy.
So that's I had to tell a lot of Republican friends of mine, and I have a lot of them, that when Bush sat there in the class with the 6-year-olds and the first graders or kindergarten with the upside down book, that was after he was told about the second plane, not the first. Okay, they all think it's the first because their attitude is, who could have sat there for 15 minutes looking like a deer caught in headlights if they knew it was the second plane? Okay, well, I mean, so Fox, that's been, making all kinds of naughty noise, both here and in the UK, I have a feeling is on its way out, and Rupert is, I think the bottom's fallen out for him. So, and you can see it on the time track.
Yeah, well, everything comes to an end. All great things must end.
All empires.
And unfortunately, we must end as well, Paul. Yes, it's been so much fun talking to you today.
Well, I had a good time at this, and I'd love to do it again.
Oh, please.
No, we could definitely. Yeah, we
anytime there's some big stuff going on, or any of the stuff we talked about happening that then happens.
Yeah.
Yes. And we've got a better idea of what we're looking at now with your help with the time tracks. I think we can read them a bit better now.
A little bit, so yeah. Is there anything on your time track about you having sex a second time, Basil?
No.
No, okay.
Unfortunately. Thanks so much, Paul.
Listen, guys, have a great time, and I love doing this, and I look forward to doing it again.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Paul.
Man.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
God bless.
Right, that was Paul Guercio.
Play a little ident there, or a little...
well, I'm actually, no, bear with me. God, you ruined my link.
Sorry.
That was Paul Guercio, who we're going to try and get back on again, hopefully, very soon.
Very soon.
He is very, very interesting.
He's amazing.
We've got so much paperwork from him here that the desk is just covered in these time tracks.
Yeah.
And they're all on the website, and you can download them from the website, and here are the details to do so.
Yes.
That's a link.
AlternativeFutureRadio.com. Stalk us on Twitter @OutThereHour. Send hate mail to helpdesk@AlternativeFutureRadio.com. Insult us at Facebook.com/OutThereHour. Troll us on YouTube.com/AFRadioYT. Send us questions for upcoming guests, make requests, or just complain. It's all good. Alternative Future Radio, where spooky just got weird.
Well, what do you think about that? How are you liking the new jingles?
Oh, the new jingles are fantastic. What do I think about him?
Fantastic.
Bloody hell.
He got your number.
He's got your number.
Well, yeah, I mean, seriously.
He figured us out.
Yeah. I mean,
That's shocking.
I'm easy to read, though. Look at it. It's just greatness. I'm like a majestic silverback.
He's not saying that. He's saying
I'm looking at your whimpering diagram. Look at me, majestic silverback. That's me.
No, it's not what he's saying. He's saying that my one is quiet for those 3 years.
Quiet, yeah.
It's
quiet.
There's no peaks because we're working together. So you're peaking and I'm actually flatlined.
What you're basically saying is that I'm carrying you.
No, that's not what it's saying. It's saying we're working in perfect harmony. But it's amazing. You stick those two charts together.
Yeah, I know. And they kind of look... And one takes off where the other one goes down.
I'm really sorry for people listening that we weren't very clear about what the chart looked like.
Yeah, we'll go and download them.
It's a ream of numbers coinciding with a...
It's basically a bar graph, but it's made with letters and numbers.
And what you have is peaks for certain years and then troughs for certain years. And when it's peaking, that's when stuff is going to happen.
Yeah, it could be good, could be bad.
It could be good, it could be bad. That's the only thing about it.
Yeah, I might be in store for 5 years of really bad stuff.
Are you serious? Oh, yeah, you could be. You think that's going to be great. That might not be. Yeah. Where's mine?
You've got yours.
Mine is here. So it looks like the way I'm reading mine, 2014 to 2017, is going to be lovely and peaceful.
Peaceful, yeah.
Because I'm not doing anything by the look of it.
Yeah, you're just going to slip into a peaceful coma and wake up 2018.
I'll give you my diary for the next 20 years. I'm quite busy 2013.
Yeah.
I'm not doing much from 2014 to 2017.
Yeah.
2018, I'm pretty bloody busy.
You're busy 2018?
So I am. I can't work with you then. I can't do anything with you.
Well, I'm busy pretty much from late 2012 until at least 2018. I haven't got anything.
Isn't it funny how you're busy and I'm doing nothing?
Yeah.
What's going on there?
Some people would say it's symbiotic. Some people would say it's parasitic.
Let's call it. And then we've gone way over time.
way over time. It's like the Out There 2 hours.
Is it? Oh, great. Well, thanks so much to Paul Guercio.
For Paul Guercio, the Merlin Project. We probably have to rebrand this the Out There 2 hours.
Hey,
special.
Look them up. They're well worth looking into.
Let's pretend that we always intended to do 2 hours and rebrand it like a special.
Oh, well, it's time, and time is flexible.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Do you want another jingle?
Yeah, why not?
Go for it.
The Out There Hour on Alternative Future Radio. The Out There Hour with Basil and Mark. www.alternativefutureradio.com.
Yay! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Out There Hour, home of the unusual. I'm talking about Basil primarily.
The Out There Hour on Alternative Future Radio. The Out There Hour with Basil and Mark. www.alternativefutureradio.com.
Yay! Everybody join in on the yay.
Isn't it great? I love that new jingle.
Do you like that one?
Yeah.
We've got a selection of those over coming weeks to try out. We're just trying that out to fit.
We'll be playing them over and over and over again.
Yes, like an autistic numpty that you are. We've got a guest today.
Oh, I'm very excited.
Big guest?
Imagine.
Go on. Oh, I hate it when you start these things with imagine. Don't mention Dr. Dolittle.
I won't. Imagine, if you will,
a
supercomputer.
Right.
That can predict the future. Science fiction.
Yeah.
Or science fact.
Or Basil, off on one.
Today we are talking to Paul Guercio.
Yes, we are indeed, yes.
Of the Merlin Project.
We are indeed, yeah.
And his computer program that can do just that.
Yes, and he's predicted a number of events throughout history. He's quite successfully.
He's predicted historical events, and he can also predict the best time for you to perhaps start a project.
Yeah.
Get married.
Children, that kind of thing?
Maybe even run for office.
He's got a number of websites. We've got links to them all on our website, alternativefutureradio.com. He's got lots of what they call time tracks, which I'm going to be asking him about.
He's very kindly sent us a
load of these things. I'm going to put some of these on our website, on Paul Guercio's page, so that people can download and have a look at these while they're listening, and they can go through these. We've got some of them specific to us. He's done a couple of these tracks on you and me and this show,
which I'm very
which I didn't tell you about, and you only learnt about 30 seconds ago.
I hope it's going to be good.
I hope so. You can get some of these tracks from, I think it's, you can actually, I put all the links on the website so they're easier to find because there's a few sites there.
They'll do a time track for you as an individual,
yes,
or as a company, and they have done they've done time tracks for the editor of Vanity Fair. He was mentioning to us
all sorts,
all kinds of celebrities and business people.
I imagine he probably won't even tell us some of them.
When's the best time to launch something? A product,
business,
or a business, or.
But then there's also the political stuff as well. I imagine investors have probably got a lot of interest in this kind of thing because they really can see political instability, oil prices, that kind of thing.
These guys are advisors to some very big fish in the world.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So we shall hopefully, without further ado, go over to, I believe, New Hampshire, and we shall talk to Paul Guercio. Do we have you there, Paul Guercio?
You have me here.
Aha. Did I remember right? You are in New Hampshire, aren't you?
I'm actually in Maine.
Oh, in Maine.
I'm a little closer to you than New Hampshire.
A little.
Is this Stephen?
I'm the shore that the ocean hits after it bangs off against you guys.
So, the Merlin Project, or is it the Merlin Project or Project Merlin?
Well, we use both.
Right.
It started out as the Merlin Project. The website is listed as projectmerlin.com.
Yeah.
But that was a matter of politics involving network solutions, the people that handle the domain names and so on. But anyway, there was a time when you could get any domain name, nobody cared. Last time I looked, business.com sold for $20 million, I think, something like that.
Wow.
And there's still an ongoing battle about who owns sex.com.
Yeah, that sold for a lot of money, didn't it? I remember that one.
It sure did, and there was a lot of back and forth about it. A friend of mine who has a radio show on the Fox network in the States, and I guess you can hear Fox around the world. I think they stream it.
Yes.
Alan Combs registered the domain name Alan, ALAN.com. Okay,
nice.
That's like Basil.com or Paul.com.
Yeah.
He registered that when nobody cared.
You could probably retire on that now.
Well, not business.com. You could, and sex.com and a few others like that, but Coca-Cola.com probably. But anyway, it's interesting that this project, which began 23 years ago, began as the result of a radio show.
That's right.
I was a guest on a station, large 50,000 water out of Boston, called the David Brudnoy Show on WBZ Boston, and I had been doing David's show for years.
Yes.
And
as an astrologer, was it?
I started out doing astrology, and that's where my interest began back in the late 60s. But I noticed something. I did something my astrology teacher at the time said don't do, and that was don't mix and match. Okay, in other words, stay away from tarot cards and Ouija boards and runes and all of that stuff. Just do astrology.
Okay.
I didn't listen to him, and I looked at all these other things. And after a few years, I noticed something. I noticed that each one of these, what we like to think of as sort of mystical systems, had a common thread.
Right.
And the common thread was they all dealt with time in very similar ways. And all of them basically are time-based. I mean, if you take a look at even a tarot reading has past, present, and future.
Yeah.
And if and oftentimes they'll tell you that a reading doesn't go forward any more than about 7 years. Well, we have, 7 lean years and fat years in the Bible and the 7-year itch. And if you break a mirror, you get 7 years of bad luck.
Yeah.
Where did that all come from?
Yeah.
Well, it came from the fact that the ancients of various civilizations noticed that events came in orderly patterns, used as measuring sticks for that every so often, the appearance of the white buffalo and, certain number systems happening in their mathematics and the appearance of certain planets at certain seasons in certain years and so on. And they used those as measuring sticks for this pattern that they had noticed. In other words, they noticed the pattern and then they looked around for something to blame it on.
Yeah.
And the thing that they blamed it on depended on what civilization we're talking about here. So the Mayans blamed it on one thing, and the Sumerians and the Egyptians blamed it on something else. But they were all noticing the same something, and that is that time comes in orderly intervals and patterns. And if you start noticing that, you'll be able to forecast things.
Okay.
Because if things come along every so often, and the every so often is unique to that particular situation, you can start to forecast when that thing is going to happen again.
Now,
Okay,
can I just ask you a question there? Is it that there are set intervals of time, or is it specific to the person or the thing or the institution? Do you have a cycle and I have a cycle, or are they all the same?
Well, a little of both.
Okay.
There are organized cycles in our little corner of the universe over here. I'll tell you what they are, and you and your guests and your colleague there can have some fun with this.
Okay.
If you take any event of any significance in your life, any event that was a new event, in other words, it was years, and then double that 42 years, and then double that 84 years. So that if you took an event that happened in your life, let's say that was important, there was a Genesis event, something brand new, say 5 years ago, you would now know that about 2 or 2.5 years from now, there would be some kind of a reprise of the original event. Oh, the same people would be involved, or the same circumstances would be involved, or the next stage of those circumstances would be involved. Okay, and you could predict it with the same kind of accuracy that Nelson was using to predict sunspots and solar flares.
Would it be weaker than the initial event?
No, it's not. It's not. I don't think it's a cause and effect system.
Right.
One of the things that caught the ear of my colleague, who is a physicist, MIT physicist, who holds the patent on the laser, the excimer laser that's used in LASIK eye surgery and in semiconductor manufacturing. So all of these iPhones and whatnot are the brainchild, basically, of my colleague. He invented the laser that does that.
Wow.
Okay. He was listening to me on a radio show in Boston in the fall on Halloween, as a matter of fact, in 1988. And found that the story that I was telling about time, which is essentially the one I'm telling you, measured up, well to things that he had discovered or considered as being likely himself. So he called me up and said, I want to come in for an appointment. I want to see what you're doing. So we made the appointment. He came in. It was an evening appointment. We were supposed to get started at 8 o'clock or something like that. At 3 in the morning, not having done his appointment at all, we concluded we better set up another date, because we spent the 6 hours comparing notes on time.
Right.
Okay. How time really works. Is it just an abstraction, or is it like the ocean tides or the seasons? It actually causes things. Okay. Certain intervals of time have some kind of a causal effect, like the sunspots and solar flares, that are predictable. Now, is the event predictable that's going to happen at that next juncture? Probably not. But if you know enough about the individual or the circumstance that you're measuring, and you know what they're likely to do because they've been around enough over enough years that you know a little about their history. So in other words, to be a good predictor, you need to be a good news junkie.
Yeah.
Okay? If you're not a good news junkie, you're going to be a lousy predictor.
Yeah.
But if you are a good news junkie and you've done some historical research on what the hell has happened to them over the years involved, and you know when the next time is likely to be when the, call it the big stuff, is likely to surface in their life, you can make a pretty good prediction as to what kind of thing that event is liable to be. And not only will you have the right time of that event in the future, but a pretty decent idea of what kinds of circumstances might come up considering who it is, okay, and what their way of doing things consists of. So if they're a criminal or they're, if they're a celebrity, you can start to say, well, now let's see what happened in their life 5 or 6 or 7 years ago that would be coming up for some kind of renewal now. Their marriage, their career, making or losing money, gaining or losing family. What would be those things? And it occurred to circuits available or shortwave. Okay, now shortwave is one of those phenomenon because you're bouncing the signals off the ionosphere and whatnot. Unlike what we have today, it's very, very sensitive to things like sunspots and solar flares.
Correct.
In the last couple of weeks, for instance, we've had some really nasty solar flares, so much so that they were afraid they were going to affect the satellites.
Yep, that's right.
But back in the 30s or 40s, they would have done hellish things to shortwave communications.
Yep.
So companies like RCA that were in the communications business needed to know if there was a way to forecast in advance when there would be sunspots or solar flares of a significant enough nature that it would affect point-to-point communications by shortwave.
Yeah.
And they hired this guy, John Nelson, to see if there was a way to do that. Well, Nelson, using planetary angles, kind of sort of like astrology, maybe?
Yeah.
Found out that when certain planets are in certain locations in our solar system, there is an increase or decrease in the level of solar flares and sunspots.
Right.
And conversely, when they're in other positions, organized positions, repeatable positions, ones that he could forecast, the sunspots and solar flares would go up. John Nelson got to the point where he was so good that he could predict that on Tuesday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, New York time, there was going to be a Class A solar flare. And so therefore you had to change the frequencies on which you'd be transmitting shortwave in order to not be affected by this solar flare.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, RCA had John Nelson installed in a position that they created for him called radio propagation analyst.
Yeah.
In other words, analyzing frequencies to see which ones could be used and which ones were going to not be able to be used in advance.
Yep.
Weeks in advance, usually. And what he found was that some of the classical astrological angles, like squares and conjunctions and various other things like that, had not only a marked increase in the level of sunspots and solar flares, but that you could predict when this was going to happen because the solar system is like a clock. It's very organized. These planets take a certain length of time to make an orbit or a certain length of time to rotate on their axis, like us, okay, where our 24-hour day comes from and our sunrise and sunset and the full moons and new moons and the high tides and low tides and all of that stuff is planetary. Okay, it's affected by planetary movement. Well, Nelson discovered that when planets were in classical astrology positions, at least certain ones, that he could forecast sunspots and solar flares enough so that he kept the job for 40 years. Okay, with RCA. not exactly your basic mystical company.
No.
No.
Okay. So it occurred to me when I started playing around with all of these mystical systems and noticing the patterns, the organized patterns of time in which these various systems were broken down. They all have a base 7, for instance, not a base 5 or 10 or 25 or 50th anniversary. It's base 7. So 7 and 14 and 28 and 35 and so on.
Yeah.
Okay. The ones that seem to have the most impact are the ones that come along at about 7 years and then 21, what we call a genesis event. It was not like something else that you've had happen before. So I'm sure we can all think of a few of those things, like first time you had sex or first time you...
Funny you should say that, Paul. Yeah.
Excuse me?
It's funny you should say that, because the date that we started this podcast, March the 15th, was actually the first time I ever had sex. March the 15th.
That day?
Yes.
Like 2 months ago?
No, oh well, yeah. No. So it's quite interesting that the two dates.
You are pulling my leg.
I'm not, Paul. I'm telling the truth. Honest to God.
Is he really telling the truth?
He probably is. Actually, it's unfortunate, but it's probably the first, last, and only time.
Okay, well, maybe from the time track, I would wonder. Let's assume, for instance, that from that starting moment, which was what you call a genesis moment, there is a built-in pattern of repeatability. So here's the pattern.
Yeah.
9 months later, there's a change.
Okay.
To some extent, and that's a fairly small one. To some extent, about 2 or 2.5 years later, there's a change, and then the big intervals. 7 1/4, 21, 42, 84 years later. So take an event that happened that was really important in your life, a past event.
Yeah.
Add 9 months to it first and see what happened at the 9-month juncture. And then you can look at the 2.5-year juncture, but most especially, you want to look at what happened about 7 years, actually 7 1/4 years later.
This sounds like what I would know as harmonics.
Well, in a way it is. Harmonics would be a good way of describing it. One of my mentors, I'll go back and give you the rest of the years, but one of my mentors was not somebody into mystical stuff at all. I never met the man, but did a lot of studying of what he had discovered, because what he discovered is essentially a kind of harmonics. His name is John Nelson. You can Google him, John H. Nelson. He worked for RCA, Radio Corporation of America, the forerunner of NBC and so on.
Right.
RCA in the years between, let's say, the 20s and the 70s, used a lot of shortwave because we couldn't bounce things off satellites. There weren't any. Okay, so satellite transmission of communications is a relatively recent phenomenon, basically from about the middle or late 70s, 74, 5, 6 in there is basically where it started up, because that's when Larry King, for instance, here in the States, started doing a overnight national radio show, and it was done because they could bounce this signal off the satellites. They wouldn't have to tie up what they call landlines. Okay, there aren't a lot of landlines. There's a countless number of frequencies on which you can transmit audio. So therefore, when the satellites went in, Larry became a phenomenon, and for years he was on overnight all over the country, and probably could be heard in Europe as well.
Oh, we got him the same day.
That was satellite transmission. Before that, for all of the years back to the beginning of radio, essentially in the 20s, they had to use shortwave. Okay, and there were all these fancy shortwave receivers. Some of the best were made in Germany. Grundig made them, for instance. They were terrific. You could listen to, the Moscow Symphony Orchestra in real time out of Moscow on shortwave.
Yeah.
Okay, or if you needed to transmit important communications, whether it was civil communications or government stuff or whatever it was. The only way you could transmit that to, say, Europe from the States would either be by landline, the cable that went under the Atlantic, okay, which is a very limited number of